The Retrieval Practice Grid active learning experience rests heavily on the teacher's ability to convey to their students that, as educator Kate Jones writes, using your memory shapes your memory. That this tool is not an assessment, but a powerful learning experience that is low stakes or no stakes in the classroom practice. The goal of retrieval practice is to allow for accurate and efficient retrieval of information from memory. The more often we retrieve information from our brains, the stronger the neural pathways become and the faster we are able to retrieve it in the future. Consider a map of a major city. There are surface streets and there are freeways. The more freeways there are, the faster it is to travel from point A to point B. The neural pathways work in a similar way. The first few times we retrieve information from our memory, it's like taking the surface streets. It takes time and effort for the information to navigate its way through the brain. However, the more often we retrieve the information, the neural pathways strengthen and the information travels much quicker, much like taking the freeway. The grid strategy is one way to use retrieval practice in the classroom. The grid strategy begins with the teacher or PLC creating a grid, using a chart or table, with as many boxes as deemed appropriate based on the amount of lessons the grid will be used for. The boxes in the grid should be large enough to ensure that all students have enough room to write in them. Each box of the grid will contain a specific element of a topic already studied. No new material. The box could refer to a concept, event, individual, key term, date, etc., but must be the essential content and material for the previous learned unit of study. There are many different ways to use this strategy, but in this video, we will focus on one of the two methods, the grid challenge. The second method has a similar setup to the standard grid, but instead is a grid challenge. The grid challenge has a range of questions for students to generate and answer. The aim of the grid challenge is to provide different questions that vary in difficulty. This works well with a mixed ability class. The challenge is focused on the subject content, not the activity itself, and only requires a very brief explanation and instruction to students. Each question in the grid is worth a certain amount of points, and the points increase as the level of difficulty increases. Teachers will prepare an answer sheet for students to work out their answers and keep track of their points, so students do not have any working memory overload, trying not only to process what they are trying to retrieve, but also point totals. Students are allotted around 8 to 10 minutes to individually answer as many questions in the grid as they can by memory. No notes, no books, no computers. Once the time is up, the teacher could provide the answers on a slide or paper for students to self-check and correct. Or they could discuss the answers as a class, depending on how much time you would want to dedicate to this activity. Students report their points to the teacher privately, hoping to increase their score each time. Ultimately, the goal of the Retrieval Practice Grid is to motivate students to identify and fill in their own gaps of knowledge. It is a highly adaptable resource that can be used as bell work, introduction to a unit, or as revision resources, fitting easily into any classroom learning routine. The most important thing to remember with retrieval practice, however, is that it must be routine. Students need to practice retrieving information multiple times before they move from the surface streets and finally get to travel faster through the freeway. The beauty of both grids, when used repeatedly throughout the year, challenges every individual in the classroom, no matter their ability, to build stronger dendrites in their brain and to ensure long-term learning.